Hey there, and welcome back to Badass Branding. We're still in Module 1, Branding Foundations, and this is Lesson 3, Your Brand Roadmap. And this is going to be a 30,000-foot view of how branding fits into your business. And to start with a truth bomb, and that is that you can build a house without a foundation, but it will eventually crumble. And just like your business, if you don't build the branding foundations in your business, over time, it's not going to be as successful as it can be, and it can eventually crumble if you don't have that foundation. So keep that in mind as we move through this course. So in this lesson 3, we're going to learn how branding fits into your business, and we're going to look at the 4D brand roadmap that I use, which is the framework that I use to build visual brands. So let's dive in. So how does branding fit into your business? Well, like our friend Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars, your brand is like the Force. And like Obi-Wan says, branding is what gives your business its power. It's an energy field created by all the things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds your business together. Of course, he didn't really say that. This is more of a paraphrase, but just joking around. But branding is that intangible thing, yet people still interact with it. They feel it. They understand it, but often cannot explain why they feel a certain way about your brand. And that's why branding is so important. One of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou is that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's just such a appropriate quote for branding, because branding is all about how people feel about your business. They just know that your brand makes them feel a certain way. They can't explain it. And again, if you don't know where you're going in your business or your brand, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get that final destination, if you will? And that's where we enter the brand roadmap. And here is a 30,000-foot view of the brand roadmap. And you'll see that there's 4 phases. You have your discover phase, develop phase, design phase, and deliver phase. And we're going to go through each one of these phases in a little more depth. But as you can see at the bottom of this graphic, the phases 1 and 2 are going to be more your foundational phases, and that's a lot of what we're covering in this course. And then phase 3 and 4 are your more transformational phases that allow you to put your business into the world and not only transform your business, but transform the lives of the audience you serve. So let's dive into the roadmap. So in the first phase, the discover phase, this is the strategy phase of branding. This is the non-sexy part, but it's super effective, and it is the foundation upon which everything else in your brand is built. So oftentimes people skip this part because it's not fun. It causes you to be introspective. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of thinking. And some of the things that are involved in the discover phase are going to be like your story or your why, like your origin story. I know Bobby talks about that, and your why, your core values. Your core values are so integral to creating sort of like the reasons why you do things, and it can influence everything else in your business. Who your ideal customer is. And I know Bobby goes over the Dream 100. That's a way of doing it. Understanding your value proposition, your brand personality, the tone of voice, how you talk to people, your messaging, and your positioning. So those are all the things in that discover phase. Many of those are also covered in other elements of BOMU, the Badass Online Marketing Foundations, and there is a messaging course also specifically for messaging. In the second phase, the develop phase, this is the brand identity. This is the sexy part. This is the part that everybody usually goes to first when they're starting their business. I want a logo. I want this. And this is the visual toolbox that will visually articulate what you did in the discover phase or the strategy phase. So that's why it's so important to work on those strategy or those strategic items prior to even thinking about creating the design, because that's all going to be influenced. And in the develop phase, this is where the brand identity falls in line, right? This is your logo, your colors, your fonts, any patterns or textures, design elements, photography style, illustration if you have it, and a brand guidelines document, which we'll talk about in another module. And even if you're looking at this slide deck, this is the implementation of brand identity into Bobby's brand. So the third phase, which is the design phase, this is the execution of your brand identity. So everything in your business should have your brand identity applied to it. Even if it's a simple text document, it should be in your fonts and your colors and at least have your logo on it, just to get those foundational items in place. And in the design phase, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but you are going to apply your brand identity in the designs of your website, any of your social media graphics, sales pages, brochures, stationery, any PDFs that you do. And as online entrepreneurs, we do a lot of PDFs like lead magnets, workbooks, and even a slide deck like this one that you're watching now. And the fourth phase, which is the delivery phase, this is how you put your business into the world, right? It's how your audience will experience your business on all touch points. So if we look at some of the elements that are involved in this delivery phase, your marketing plan or your strategy, your social media, your website, any advertising or ad campaigns that you do, content creation, that's a very important one, especially for us online entrepreneurs. Engagement also, how do you engage with your audience? How do you talk to them? How is your customer service? And then you look at your partnerships, your collaborations, and even vendors that you hire. And then also thinking about even internal things like communications, SOPs, and all the back end of your business as well. So this is, again, the 4D branding roadmap, 30,000 foot view. And as you can see, everything you do in that discover phase is going to influence what you do in the develop phase, which is your brand identity. And everything that you do in that brand identity phase is going to affect what you do in the design phase. And oftentimes, your develop and design are sort of done in tandem because they both are affected by each other. And then lastly, that deliver phase is going to be everything that you do in the deliver phase is what you created in the design phase. So if you look at everything on the left, that's your foundational. Everything as you move through the roadmap becomes transformational, not only to your business, but to the lives of your audience. And you may look at this and think that this is just a linear thing. You go through it and you're done, but it's really not. This is really a cyclical process, and it's just it never ends. It's always evolving. So for instance, if you put out an advertising campaign in your deliver phase and it's not a very successful one, chances are that something in your discover phase, like your messaging or your value proposition, is off. So you might have to go back and tweak something in that discover phase and put it back out there. So it's always a constant cyclical thing. And in the next module, we'll be talking about the discover phase in more depth, which is the brand strategy stuff. And then in module 3, we'll dive deeper into the develop phase, which is your brand identity. And then for design and deliver, those are not really part of this course. Each one of those line items in those phases can really be courses in and of themselves. But I want you to see where it all fits in together. And in fact, a lot of those things are covered in other aspects of BOMU, so definitely check that out. So that roadmap serves as a tool to get that 30,000 foot view of how the branding fits together in your business. And I want you to use the roadmap as a tool to identify gaps in your branding strategy and the execution. So use that as a tool to see what's missing, what you can improve upon. And sometimes you might not have even thought of certain things. So it's good to have that to see. So as an action item here, I want you to audit your brand. Just like I was talking about a moment ago, I want you to use the 4D brand roadmap to identify those gaps in your brand and then take note of, one, what's working and what's not working, but then also take note what's missing. Where are the gaps that you can improve upon? And that's it for this lesson. And just to give a recap, we did talk about how branding fits into your business. We talked about the 4D brand roadmap, and we talked about how to use that roadmap to identify gaps and improve your brand. So that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll be jumping to module 2, and we're going to dive into the discover phase of the brand roadmap. So we'll see you in the next lesson.